We're doing this an hour and a half session. There's going to be a 30-minute presentation roundabout. There'll be a time for questions and answers afterwards. Please do not interrupt Jason because they're recording this and they want it to be, they can stream it and put it online later. So no questions during his presentation. Now we've got Marie Wilsey, we've got Mike Palermo, and we've got Marcella Zapata of council.
So at the end, Jason can hold up your hand for questions and he'll recognize you guys one at a time so that we can get, there might be some good questions that might be relevant at the end that he'll want to record to.
Okay, I guess we'll start. First, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. When I started paying attention to what was going on, I felt like I was the voice yelling in the wilderness, and I'm so glad that I'm not alone in wanting to see this project become more representative of what Roswell is and can be. I want to start by talking about the current plan, what the problems are and what the objectives were, the issues and opportunities that we have with this, and the things that can be done to make it just so much better and how we get there. So let's get to the first slide there. The scope of this, as everyone knows, it runs from, it's Highway 9 from Azalea at the river up to 120. The biggest impetus behind this is always been safety because of the reversible lanes. The crash rates on this corridor are twice the state average. The traffic flow is really bad at certain hours. I think that's more a function of the intersection at the river than anything else, but it's got to be addressed. RDOT is concerned about deficiency of the bridge over Vickery Creek, but it all depends on what your objective with this project is. I don't think it's deficient. And another big thing has been for bike and pedestrian connectivity from the historic district down to the river. We've got this two tremendous resources that if you don't get in a car, you can't link between the two of them. Another thing that was part of their objective was to create a safer transit corridor. You know, there's a limit to what can be done, but you know, things will be done in any event. And because this is one of the most significantly historical communities in Georgia because of how much was spared by Sherman's March to the Sea and invasion of Atlanta, we have a certain responsibility to preserve that, and to have a context-sensitive design is essential. Now, what constitutes context-sensitive design differs between certain people, and I'll address what I think it does, and I'll tell you what the transportation people have considered to be context-sensitive. You know, this is the intersection of Azalea and Riverside Drive, and we come up to 120. Now, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of controversy about the two roundabouts, and the reason we have the roundabouts is that there is, when a state road gets redone with a major reconstruction, there are several criteria that determine whether or not roundabouts, a median is necessary. And the first one is the speed limit. If the speed is under 35 miles an hour, it's not required. We meet that threshold, but there are two more. Another one is the accident rate, and if you're way over the average, which we are, you've got to have a median. And then there's another one. The third one,
Oh, I know.
there's another one.
Volume.
Oh, the traffic volume. We're at 17, when they did the last traffic study, we were about 17,000 cars a day in the corridor, and the threshold is 18, and if we haven't passed it, we're going to pass it pretty soon. So those are 2 out of the 3 criteria. So we have to have the medians. And evidently what happened 10 or 20 years ago when they first started talking about improving the corridor, they were going to do a full unrestricted wide median all the way through the entire corridor, and there was a lot of discussion about how upset people were because of the encroachment through the historic district. And what RDOT worked out with GDOT is, and this is where they consider their context-sensitive design to come in, is the roundabout substituting for 4-way left turn intersections allows the median to be shrunk down to 5 feet instead of 17. 20 is a normal one. We've got 17 on the lower portion of this one. And you know, when I first saw the roundabout, I thought I wasn't real happy about them. But when I understood that it's that or a much wider intrusion through this area, they really do start to make sense. And the other good thing about the roundabouts is they will discourage truck traffic in the corridor. Now, as I said before, safety has been a big issue, and most of the safety issues have been blamed on the reversible lanes. The reversible lanes really are not the principal villain, because the reversible lanes, if they were, mid-block locations is where they would be occurring, and we've got 106 out of 395 accidents occurring at mid-block locations. So that's only 25% of the total. And those mid-block locations aren't necessarily all a function of the reversible lane. They're also a function of turns. And when you see that in the mid-block sections that there are 0 head-on collisions and only 2 side swipe collisions, those are the 2 types of accidents that would be most attributable to the reversible lanes, and there's just not a lot of that. Most of the collisions that occur in this corridor are angle collisions and rear end collisions, and those are a function of turns. Whether they're right turns or left turns, there's no distinction in the statistics, but the predominance is, I think, going to be left-hand turns because you're turning across an unrestricted road with no way to get out of the way. Now this is the dividing line between the upper part with the roundabouts and the narrow median, and the lower part with the wider median. And the reason for the wider median is you have to accommodate the turn lanes. This is Warm Springs. This is an intersection that is being created because this is going to be the entrance to the new parking lot for Allenbrook. And this is not a safe intersection because people speed through here, and I do it myself, so I know. The left turns without a light, that's not safe. And the problem with the area between this intersection and the roundabout at Jones, where the church and the coffee shop are, is that anyone who wants to go to something on this side and is coming from the historic district is going to be making a U-turn here. And U-turns are a prescription for accidents, as are left turn lanes without lights. So my recommendation here is either move the roundabout from Jones and put it down here, or just put another roundabout, because what I'd like to do is eliminate this extraordinarily wide median on the lower portion. As we come down the road, you know, there's a big apartment complex on the corner of Azalea and Highway 9, and this is their main entrance in. They're going to have a left turn in and a left turn out. This condominium complex next door to them is going to have a left turn in, right turn in, and left turn and right turn out. For them to make a left turn, they'll come to this intersection and make a U-turn. And again, that's just a hazard and an accident waiting to happen. A much safer proposition is going to be for these people to maintain right in, right out, but for there to not be any separation here. That complex has another entrance that they have put a permanent gate across at Warm Springs, and with a roundabout at Warm Springs, they're going to be very taken care of in terms of egress. The apartment complex has another driveway and full egress onto Azalea. So if they're just right in, right out here, and the median becomes solid here, they're not really being, their mobility is not being significantly impinged either. So as we go down the hill, now the biggest feature of this that hasn't really been talked about as much as the roundabouts is the grade separated intersection. And the white area represents an overpass. Highway 9 is going to be built up, the grade is going to come up. The grade on Azalea and Riverside is going to drop just a little bit. There's a limit to how much they can drop it because they're proposing to put a new bridge to cross Azalea, and that bridge is going to elevate 4 feet higher than the existing bridge. This overpass has to have 16.5 feet of clearance from the bottom of the bridge structure to the road, and that's going to push this road up at this point 10 to 12 feet higher than it is at this moment in time. And that rise is limited by the end of the bridge because they can't exceed a 7% grade coming up to the overpass. That raises this whole section of road, and what that does is it gets it closer to these apartments, but the road is also not just coming up, it's getting wider, and it creates all kinds of problems. Now, the whole rationale to having a grade separation at this intersection is to keep traffic moving quickly, but the problem is that there are no longer right turns allowed off of Highway 9 onto Azalea or from Azalea onto southbound 9. And the reason for that is the combination of the road rising and widening. There's just no room to get the appropriate grade necessary to descend to here in the area that they would need. So what we have is everybody in the morning who's coming down Azalea to make a right turn here is now going to go under the bridge to a roundabout and then come up this ramp. And all the traffic that is coming down Riverside Drive in the morning to go left is now combining with the right turn stuff from Azalea, and they're all being channeled into a single left turn lane. If you thought the left turn floor, double the traffic volume and see how you like that. Now, I personally believe that what's going to happen is that the stacking on this left turn lane will go down to the roundabout, which will gridlock it, defeating the purpose of having a grade separation because the road's not flowing very freely if the cars are jammed up in the roundabout.
Did you explain grade separation for anybody that wants to know what that is?
Does everybody understand the grade separation concept? So, additionally, people who have been going left from Azalea to go up to the historic district, again, they're gonna go down and they're gonna come up and they're gonna get in this lane. So you're doubling the traffic volume that turns left here and right here. And before these two lanes split, it's a single lane coming out of the roundabout. So you've just got a tremendous amount of traffic being channeled into one single lane. Then in the morning, there is no left turn activity at Highway 9 onto Riverside. But now, because you can't go right here, you have to go left. So all the right turn traffic now has to go left, and all the traffic that was not being allowed to turn. Now that it's going to be 24/7 that you can turn here, it's going to induce more demand to go left on Riverside as a chosen route. So in the morning, if this is backing up into the past the stacking lane, you're basically turning Highway 9 back into a one-lane road. Now, you're going to have a 3-light cycle here. That means you've got a left turn action, you've got a through action, and you've got this left turn action. Left turn movements are the most time-consuming and dangerous movements in an intersection. So here we're just increasing the volume of traffic and increasing the amount of left turn lanes at a very busy intersection, which isn't making it safer, it's making it more dangerous. And the other thing that makes it even more dangerous than it already is, if it wasn't dangerous enough, the multi-purpose path is tied to the curb line. It comes down here. You've got to cross this intersection. If you want to go down to the river, you've got to go down this, and you're going to be on a narrower sidewalk that is butted directly to the curb line. It's a roundabout way to get to the river. This path that goes straight across, you see how it ends here? That's because that's where the pedestrian bridge that is planned to Sandy Springs is going to commence at the end of this multi-purpose path. And the location of this path and the location of the bridge have been dictated principally by the fact that, as it was explained to me years ago when I said, why would you not put the pedestrian bridge on the side of the road that has the picture postcard view? And I was told, well, that's where the sidewalks are in Sandy Springs. I don't know about you, but when things are being planned for Roswell, I don't really care what happens in Sandy Springs. So this intersection is dangerous, it's going to be congested, and it's not going to do what it's supposed to do, which is to facilitate the flow of traffic. It may be marginally better than it is now, anything would be an improvement, but it's not the optimum option for this location. And another interesting safety feature in this project is this is the downhill side of Highway 9. And what you're going to have is a 5-foot sidewalk that's only 2 feet away from the curb. And this is next to a downhill traffic lane that is at a 7% grade. And I don't know if anybody understands what the significance of 7% grades are. Let's put it this way, you get a ticket on a road that is in excess of 7%, you go to court, you're going to beat that ticket because the propensity of a car to speed up on a heavy grade is such that they just can't enforce the speed limit. It means that it's a dangerous condition, and to have a sidewalk 2 feet off the curb on a 7% grade with the cars coming down right next to you, I don't think that's a particularly safe assembly. There are other features to this, but we'll come back because I'm trying to focus first on the safety. So as I was saying before, when you cross the bridge to get to the Riverwalk, this is where the multi-purpose path becomes a sidewalk that's tied to the back of the curb as you cross the bridge. and then it remains a sidewalk, not a multi-purpose path, and it winds around to get you there eventually. You got to go down to the roundabout, and then back up, and then under this bridge, and they still haven't shown you how they're going to connect, but I guess the idea is eventually. Next slide. This is the view of that intersection, but without all the colors and the overlay. This is I took from the right-of-way plans that they've developed, and this is the extent of the plans that are really available to the public. I asked for grading plan. I asked for the limits of clearing and or at least a schedule of the trees to be removed in this corridor. And I've been told, oh well, you know, we're tying the curb lane on the east side of Highway 9 is going to remain the same. The impact to the forest is minimal because of that. And you know, in all the public meetings, they've never discussed how much land is being cleared, how many trees are being cleared, and for developers, when we come in with a land disturbance plan, we're held to a much higher standard. We have to have a tree survey, we have to have a schedule of trees to be removed, we have to have a schedule of everything, and we have to have a grading plan. So this has been presented to the public in a way that is just not very transparent. The orange lines that you see represent the existing curb lines. And unfortunately, I forgot to, I didn't outline this one. This is the existing island at the intersection. This is the other existing island on the other side of the street. And these dark green lines, these are retaining walls. This is a very significant feature in this project. This wall and this wall are below the level of the road here because they're holding the road up, as is this. This is like a 20-foot wall right here. These are probably 15 feet. Then you see this break is where there's a kind of equilibrium in the grade, and then the wall from here up is a 10-foot wall above the road. This retaining wall along here, this is going to be a 20-foot retaining wall going down, as is this wall. And all the trees that you see planted along here, they're gone. This is the corner of the Ivy Mill ruins. The red represents the limits of disturbance that they need in order to construct that wall. And the intrusion into beyond the curb line is substantial. On this side, you can see where the existing curb is, and here is the new curb line, right here. And here is the multi-purpose path tied to that curb line. And the retaining wall goes just beyond that line. The clearing and grading has to go on here because they've got to get heavy equipment in here in order to construct this wall. It's a 20-foot wall. It's not only that you've gone higher here, but you've come out. And if you've ever walked along here, you know that there is a huge drop here already. And is being aggravated by the height and the width of the road. Now, you see this yellow line here? This is several feet above the top of the wall. It's a steel sound barrier that you see on the sides of the freeway. Now, nothing screams, welcome to the historic district, like a huge sound barrier above a huge concrete retaining wall. Wow, to call this context sensitive is, to me, just kind of a stretch. I just can't imagine driving in, and instead of seeing the tree canopy, I'm seeing concrete walls and steel walls and feeling like, oh, I'm home at prison.
How tall is the sound barrier? You may have just said it, but how tall is a sound barrier? I'm not
They're,
sure.
they're going to be 10 to 15 feet high. It is going to be an absolute, you know, visual assault when you come in. There's just no masquerading this kind of stuff. And this grade, it's too severe to do any kind of significant planting. And of course the red represents the limits of disturbance. Now as we come up the hill a little bit, you know, this is the area when you're driving down the hill, you see on the right it's kind of a gully, and they're using that for bioretention for the stormwater. This is the entrance to the apartment complex, and of course the red line is the limits of disturbance. Green are retaining walls. Now you've got the retaining wall above the pavement here, and then you've got a break where you're getting grade equilibrium, and then from here on is going to be probably a 10 to 15 foot wall going down below the road. You won't really see it, but hey, that's a lot of concrete. This is the wall that goes down, and it continues up until the grade equals out. The only place that you start to see the existing curb and the new curb align is through here. It's not the entirety of the length. This existing curb line is at the curb line of the median. The distance across here is 75 feet.
Across to the limits of disturbance?
From the limits of disturbance behind the existing curb line, 75 feet. I had thought, I was assuming it was 40 before, because I was going on the assumption that had been given to me by RDOT that, you know, the multi-purpose path was going back from the existing, the curb line wasn't going to change, and I was just making the assumption of, well, what do you have to do to get that multi-purpose path and the separation that they have in their profile. But when you're already starting so far back, 75 feet, that's massive. And then as you come through here, this is the entrance to that condo complex. This is their decel lane. That disappears. This is their acceleration lane. That disappears. You know, this is the new curb line, and there are no decel lanes in this. But I'm not big on decel lanes, so that's okay. Then this is the existing driveway into the Allenbrook complex. They're going to abandon this. They're going to build a new parking lot here at Warm Springs. It's going to be about 10 spaces. This is to compensate the Park Service for the loss of the parking lot down at Vickery Creek and Riverside Drive, which parks about 20 cars. Now this is interesting because here our curb line now, our existing curb line is for this part actually behind where the new curb is going to go. And so our limits of disturbance are not too far off of this. This is a berm that separates the existing sidewalk from the driveway there. They've got this indicated as a retaining wall, but you know they also have it all hatched out for clearing. So I'm not really sure what they're going to do there. This is the median. It's 17 feet wide. It has 6-inch curb on either side. That takes you to 18 feet. And then you've got what they call a 1-foot buffer on each side, which is actually pavement. And they're calling that a 20-foot median. It's really a 17-foot median because the measurement is from back of curb to back of curb. And what this 1-foot buffer does is it turns this 11-foot lane to a 12-foot lane. Mayor and council have recently made the effort to instruct RDOT to go to 10.5-foot lanes instead of 11-foot lanes, and that will help us. They've also been very good about asking them to reduce the width of the curb and gutter from 30 inches to 24 inches. So those lane narrowing and curb and gutter narrowings, you know, total 3 feet of width out of this whole road, and over, you know, 2,400 feet. That's a lot of impervious surface that's being taken out of the project, and that's a good thing. And I'm really happy that Mayor and Council have been, you know, so responsive so far to our concerns. Now, when you look at the median with the tree in the middle, RDOT's representation is we're going to create a tree canopy going up Highway 9. Well, you know, we have a tree canopy. I kind of like it. I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like I'm back in Roswell when I come up the hill. Well, it's not the continuous median they make you think it is, because of intersections and tapers. There's out of the 2,700 feet, it's maybe 900 feet. A third is going to be suitable for this look. And I don't really see how that is going to be compensating us for the tree canopy that we're going to lose, that's currently 50 to 60 feet tall, arching over the road. Another thing that they have not really thought about is, I'm pretty sure from my experience in this corridor that this road is sitting on a rock ledge. And you know, when you say, oh, I'm going to plant oak trees here, well, oak trees are taproot trees, their roots go straight down. I doubt they have it in mind to be blasting tree pits for these trees. So there's just a complete lack of understanding with what they're working with. I would be very surprised if to learn that they've got corings, because my gosh, they don't even have a tree survey or a topo available to us. Next. Now the intersection at Highway 9 is what they call a grade-separated single-loop intersection. And the purpose is to facilitate traffic flow, but I think it fails because you've got two left turn movements that completely defeat the purpose of it. We've gone over most of this. Right now you've got 3,500 vehicles a day turning right from Azalea and left from Riverside. And now we're going to combine that, so we have 7,000 vehicles in one left turn lane every day. I don't think that's really going to work very well. Let's see. Most of this I think I already talked about. The other thing is that there are people in town who just want to see this corridor get fixed as soon as possible. And what's important is not when the work starts, it's when the work completes. The intensity of this construction in as constricted an area as they've got to work in, this is going to take 2, maybe 3 years to construct. You want to live with this mess for 2 or 3 years? I don't. Especially when I think there's a better way to do this that is a lot less intrusive, more functionally efficient, and will cost a good deal less. The multimodal path that is tied to the curb line, besides its intrusion and the amount of tree clearing that's required to accommodate it, the thing that really blows my mind is it's been designed more as an express lane to Sandy Springs bypassing the river. Whereas I'm pretty sure that the bulk of the trips, both from Sandy Springs and from Roswell, regardless of which direction, your destination is the Riverwalk. And to have that bypassed with the, a dangerous workaround to get down there instead of a more direct route, I find that to be absolutely mind-boggling.
The longevity of the options that they gave, you might come to that.
Yes, let's go to the next slide. Bear with me because we've been putting this together just about up until the time you guys arrived. Some things might not be in order. Go to the page with the consultant. There we go. So the city hired a consultant, a traffic consultant. I got this from a open records request. They did this maybe 10 years ago, and they asked them to analyze the different options for this intersection with the river, and they had like probably 12.5 possibilities. They narrowed it down to 2 options that made the most sense. One is what's called the at-grade bow tie, and that is where this intersection continues to be at grade, but there are no turn movements whatsoever, no left turn movements here, only right turn, right out, and right in at all 4 corners, and there is a roundabout at each end, and that's how you make your functional left-hand turns. Now this is a lot less intrusive, it's a lot less environmentally destructive, and it's a lot less money to build.
And a lot less time.
And takes less time.
A lot less
And
time.
less time. The whole project's done in a year instead of 2 or 3 years. And the timing of this, where they're talking about starting this in 2 years, that's pretty much going to coincide when all that mess coming up 400 for the express lanes is going to be hitting us. And if we're going to have that construction and this construction simultaneously for an unnecessarily extended period of time, I don't think anybody's going to be very happy. And these are realities that I don't think RDOT has been entirely forthcoming with when they're giving advice to council. And they're giving council a tremendous disservice in this regard, because you guys have to depend on them for good, solid information, and you're not
Talk
getting
about the
it.
longevity of both plans.
Oh yeah, so go to the next slide. This is, now the single loop interchange that the consultants recommended was in the opposite quadrant. This is the quadrant that RDOT wants to put it. This quadrant is where the consultant recommended. Didn't require, tearing out one bridge and building 2 new bridges over Vickery Creek. And the predominant flow of traffic is a right-hand turn. And that's a good thing. That makes your traffic flow better. It's not the single loop grade separated option that they chose. They chose a variation on a theme. And I think that was a poor choice. Now, the interesting thing about these 2 options, for some reason they decided this was the better option, but if you look at the bottom here, significantly improves level of service, though still level of service F in the 2035 AM peak period. Go back to the slide just before. Significantly improves level of service results, although still level of service F in the 2035 AM peak period. If you're going to have the same result in the year 2035, why would you spend twice the money for the same result and live with the disaster for 2 additional years, and at the end of the day have less of a service life? If no matter what you do, you're jamming up in 2035, well, it seems to me if it takes 2 more years to build it, you're getting 2 years less of functional service. Let's go back to where we were before we jump. Now, context sensitivity that's claimed is you know, RDOT likes to waive the award they got from GDOT. Well, it's GDOT. It's traffic engineers giving other traffic engineers awards. Wow, I'm really impressed.
For context sensitivity.
Yeah, for context sensitivity. And that's just solely due to doing the roundabouts and the narrow median on the upper portion of the corridor. As I've said, and I can't emphasize this enough, the entry to Roswell on this corridor is a unique and powerful tree canopy. It is, I believe, the only state highway, certainly in an urban area, but really anywhere that has a national forest, literally starting 3 feet behind the curb. That is just, I think it's worth saving, but I'm not a traffic engineer. We talked about the excessive amount of clearing that's required for this. The 2 new bridges, to build those 2 bridges, that's a 300-foot wide swath crossing over Vickery Creek. We've covered all this, the hundreds of linear feet of retaining wall, the raising and widening of the road, and the look of a freeway interchange, which with a bland suburban boulevard behind it as you come up the hill. Now, to take context sensitivity dialed down to a much more micro and local level, my neighbor and friend Ashok here owns the strip mall here next to the South Jones Road, and he is very concerned, and rightly so, with the impact to his property. And in particular, he's concerned about this oak tree. This is a spectacular specimen oak. That's my truck parked next to it. Look at the size of that canopy. It's like something you would see in an encyclopedia next to an example of specimen oak tree. Now this is not being impacted by the road. It's not being impacted by the multi-purpose path. It's being impacted because they're going to put a catch basin here and here on a road that doesn't have it currently, and then run the drain line into the bigger drain line to service the corridor. And I just find it absolutely amazing, and the only reason I can think that they came up with this is if they did do a tree survey, they turned the layer off and figured we're going to design the road. I don't need extra gobbledygook in my way when I'm trying to figure out where my lines go. I mean, this is so avoidable. These catch basins can be down here. There's no reason for this to kill this tree, because you come this excavation is going to go right up to the base of the tree. There's no way that you can save that. That tree is a dead tree in this design. And I am particularly aware of this because I know Ashok. But I'm sure there are other property owners that are being similarly impacted on the upper corridor, because my emphasis, I know, has been on the bottom portion. But it's just too much for me to go into, each and every one and how you can save, the trees and the houses with a minimal amount of impact. But seeing this as an example, I know that it just takes a little thought, and it can be done. But if you're missing something like this, you can't say, oh yeah, we got context sensitive design on this baby. We got this not. Wow, really? I disagree. Next slide. And so this was the summary for those consultants that did the intersection analysis. They recommended the single quadrant interchange or the phased bow tie. For some reason, they came up with the idea that the interchange is the best ultimate solution. But they had it in a different location than where RDOT has put it. And where RDOT has put it, I don't think this argument can be made. And then, of course, the bow tie, the quickest, least expensive to construct. Next. Let's talk about cost. Now, these numbers are for the pedestrian bridge. East side of Highway 9, $3,875,612. If you put it on the west side of Highway 9, it's $2,957,262. That's a $900,000 difference. And the reason for the difference is there is additional right-of-way cost on the east side. There is also a great deal more in ecological intrusion that they have to compensate for. There's a creek. I've never noticed it until I read the documents from RDOT. There's a creek that runs along the side of the bridge on this side, and they've got to deal with that, and then they've got to deal with the wetlands that they step on so severely through here with the retaining wall and whatnot. This is the west. And the other thing that drives this cost is this has to stay high and level with the roadway, because when it ties into the multi-purpose path, that is tied to the roadway. So it runs longer and higher. Now on this side, they're tapering it down because they're not tied to the roadway. They don't have the ecological considerations, and they don't have as much money to spend on right-of-way acquisition. I always thought that this was the side, before I knew anything, just intuitively, if somebody said, where would you put it? I'd say, well, I'd put the pedestrian bridge on the picture postcard side, because this is where the view is. And if people are going to walk across, they're going to do selfies, and it's promotion for Roswell. This is not the picture postcard side. But more to the point, not only is this the better side for picture postcard, it's also $900,000 less, and it ties in better to the Riverwalk, which is what it should be tying into. This bridge should hit the Riverwalk, and the Riverwalk should be the connective tissue to the multi-purpose path up into Roswell. So this is just one small feature, $900,000, as though that's where the sidewalks are in Sandy Springs. So in the first quarter of 2018, last year, the GDOT did another cost analysis. The one they did in 2017, and you can't really see this very well, the construction cost was $20,384,419 and some odd cents. That's just the construction cost. It doesn't include the right-of-way cost or the utility relocation cost. Then last year, in 2018, they revised that because I guess the plans started to become more tangible, and they started to realize that they had things like retaining walls and some very expensive bridges and sound barriers, and it is now projected to be $30 million, $341,342 and some odd cents. Let's go to the next slide. So, on the City of Roswell website, on the T-SPLOST estimate, they're still saying, oh, it's a $24 million project and Roswell's only going to pay $3 million. Now, from what I understand, the cost of Oxbow has just continued to explode, and they finally got the bids in, and they came back to the well for another $2 million, which I understand, and correct me, counsel, if I'm wrong, it came out of T-SPLOST Bay Creek.
Yes.
So, who knows? I mean, I don't think that there's a bottomless well of money at either the state or the federal level where they're going to go, oh, no, we just want to keep spending money for you guys, because it gets worse. So, if the way you get to their $30 million, there are certain things that go into it, and I had to do an extension so that when I make adjustments down below, I can make the same adjustment. So they start with a base of 26 million. Then you've got engineering and inspection fees that are 5% of the base. That's $1.3 million. Now, do you see an incentive for the consultant designing this to value engineer it in any way and save construction costs? His bread is buttered on a different side than ours is. And then you've got contingency that adds this and this times 10%. This AC adjustment, that's asphalt and concrete. That is an index that they use year by year, and so it just adds another $378,000. No big deal when you're RDOT. And that's how we get to the $30 million. Now, we take, oh, by the way, that was a 2013 estimate for that bridge cost at $3.8 million. So if we add the $30 million and we add the $3.8 million, now we're at $34,266,000. Add to that the right-of-way cost, yes, George is paying for it, but it's $11,607,000. Utility relocation cost is $1.5 million, and the project estimate with all that, out the door, $47,237,000. Does that look anything like $24 million? I don't know. I feel that anytime RDOT presents to the public, it's shell games, smoke and mirrors. So now, I've taken the number that we worked on the other page. We've got $34,266,000. I've got a detailed breakdown of all the cost categories that GDOT generated in 2018. And we've got the construction of the 3 bridges, because one of those is the grade separation bridge. We've got the reinforced concrete approach slab, which is what you need after you end the bridge. Demo of the bridge, shoring, which is a function of retaining walls. We've got retaining walls. We've got cofferdam, which is a function of putting pylons in the middle of the creek. Retaining wall steel in addition to the concrete, the sound barrier, and grading. Now, they only have a $500,000 budget for grading in this project, which I find to be kind of extraordinary considering they've got all this grading and clearing. They're going to need to haul in a minimum of 1,000 loads of dirt at $100 a load. That's $100,000 just in hauling dirt, and I think that number could easily be twice that. But they've got an awful lot of material they've got to haul off. They've got to demolish the old road, the curbs, and they've got to take it to the recycling plant, and that's truck time and loader time to rip it up and put it in. So out of their $500,000 budget, I took $150 because this is just pretty intensive. So the single loop interchange, when you bring it across with all the extensions, is $11,568,000. That's a lot of money. That's just mind-boggling, and I can't understand why anybody would come up with something like this and not go, yeah, we're back to the redesign. The lower multimodal path, which is, most people probably know, I'd like to relocate to the contour that exists in the National Forest. It was created 100 years ago when they excavated for a railroad bed that was never installed. That portion, and I've allocated some of the retaining wall costs to that. The brick pavers, they've got $1 million in brick pavers at $15 a square foot, and I've taken the section out that's just that portion. Landscaping, they've got $1.5 million for landscaping, taking $500,000 of that. So that multimodal path, $5,549,000. So when you combine these two things, you're up to like, well, if if we add the bridge, the multimodal path, and the $900,000 in putting the pedestrian bridge over the Chattahoochee on the wrong side of the road, $17.6 million. Because I've added back for a multimodal path that would cost less than $500,000. Yellowstone Park, which is National Park Service, they have multimodal paths. They're using a very interesting paving that is pervious. It sits on a gravel bed. The water percolates through it. It's flexible. It's made of recycled tires. It's $9 a square foot to install. And it's also great for running because it gives.
And it's ADA compliant.
And it's ADA compliant. So there's not much grading to be done there. And even if we say, well, because it's going through the woods, we got to add some lights. Let's throw another $100,000 for lights. Let's just say that you know, I'm all wet now. Let's add another $100,000. I would still only be at $600,000 versus $5 million for something that is going to be a much more pleasant path to get down to the river on, and doesn't require so much grading and clearing and gets you on the road sooner. Next slide. We're done? Oh, we're not really done. Here's a picture of the existing path that I would like to be our multimodal path down to the river. Doesn't that look nice and just being separated from the road by 7 foot of grass? I don't know. I just like trees. Next. The grade separated single loop intersection. I think I've talked about this, that it needs to be the bow tie at grade. Reducing the median and all the left turn lanes in this corridor, that will make this a much safer corridor for cars and pedestrians. It'll make it cost less, it'll reduce the amount of impervious surface. There may be additional cost savings because when you reduce the impervious surface, you're also reducing the amount of drainage requirements. But I didn't go there. I just figured, you know, let's just focus on the bridge.
Jason, you didn't talk about what you need to, what you could do with the median, in that picture with the median and the width of the road, if you got rid of the left-hand lanes, turn lanes.
Let's go back up. So we're going to have a little bit to work with, because if we make this 5 foot, we're taking 12 feet out here. We've already got 3 feet in the roadway that council has already taken care of for us. So we've got 15 feet that we've narrowed the width of this footprint. We can get this to be wider and give us better separation from the road. This completely goes away because now we have decoupled the multi-purpose path from the road.
But not until you get to a certain point.
Right, now this sidewalk comes down and it terminates at the entrance to the apartment complex here. And that's it, it ends.
On the west side.
On the west side. And then they have to cross the street. There's going to be a hawk crossing signal here because this is also a bus stop. And that's nice. This is where my proposed path comes the closest to the road here, so it's a very easy connection to get onto that. For those who don't like walking through the woods, we've talked about maybe having a concrete sidewalk that comes down to where we would have the roundabout here, because now that we're shrinking the road width, we've got room to work with.
Are there any questions for Jason?
Jason, you talked about the necessity of having the 17-foot islands because of traffic volume and traffic accidents.
Well, the islands are a function of turn lanes. if you don't have roundabouts and you have turn lanes, you have to have some kind of a median. It can be a paved median, it can be a landscape median, but 17 feet is about as small as you can get with turn lanes. If you eliminate the need for turn lanes, then you can reduce it to a much smaller median. You could go to a 3-foot median with a concrete jersey barrier, but I don't think anybody wants to go there. The 5-foot would be landscape and would be presentable, but nonetheless, you couldn't cross it.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for all this homework. My God.
God, yeah.
Brilliant. There's no pop quiz at the end. Yeah, because I haven't had this many numbers in years, but, you know, I live off of Jones, behind the coffee house. And I'm pretty familiar with this corridor since I was on the Historic Gateway Committee for 15 months. And this isn't the project we approved 10 years ago. However, I have a couple
Did you say it is or isn't?
It is not, at all, not even close. So why waste?
So the concept was approved in 2012, but
Right.
the actual design itself.
Yeah,
was-
what, I want to address what you just said. RDOT has said that this basic concept has been, you know, in their mind for 10 years, and going through the RDOT documents, I would believe that. But the fact of the matter is that in 2011 and 2012, they had, through those 2 years, a series of public meetings that some of you were part of, and the results, from what I understand, aren't what you were expecting. In 2012, Mayor and Council at the time approved a gateway master plan that was based on a design by Andreas Duaney. And the only commonality between that plan and this plan is a roundabout at King Street, and that is it. That's the only commonality.
That's right.
Plus that plan did not go down to the river.
Yeah, and his plan, the Andreas plan ended at Allenbrook. It didn't
That is
address
correct.
that intersection. But the thing is that that was the master plan, gateway master plan that was approved by Mayor and Council in 2012. And then in 2018, they come back with this and go, it's been the plan all along. Well, in their minds, I'm sure it was, because they're not really listening to what people are saying.
Well, I met with Mr. Duaney several times. So I have a couple of questions. First of all, I think the roundabout at Warm Springs makes more sense. You indicated that roundabouts were for 4-way traffic. Well, I live off of Jones. There's not 4-way traffic. It's 3 ways, north, south, and out of Jones.
Right.
So that's counterproductive.
I agree with you. I think that roundabout should be moved.
I think that
But,
makes more
but,
sense.
but the argument for there to be 3 of them is that it's, the longer the distance is between the turnaround, the more likely it is when somebody's thinking of going to a business on the other side of the
Right.
road, they're going, up too far, I'm not going
Well,
back.
that was one of the things that Mr. Duaney brought up when they talked about making it 2 roads, one northbound, one southbound, roads, not just lanes.
Right.
With an island in the middle where, of course, everyone would want to purchase and build a home in the middle of Highway 9. But he reminded us that it would reduce visibility to the businesses on that road by 50%.
Right.
And no one, all you gotta do is look at Highway 120. No one's gonna go down 2 miles to turn around, to turn around, to turn around. They just say screw it and keep going.
Mhm.
But I have a couple of other questions, and thank you for taking time. I remember when we spent $250,000 to buy those 10 parking spaces for Allenbrook. And we were told that we were gonna own them and that they were not gonna be for Allenbrook. Is Allenbrook gonna pay us for those? That's federal land, and we paid city money for that $250,000.
That is a trade-off that they're making. When RDOT came up with their plan, they went to the National Park Service, they said, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to impact you, and this is what we're going to do for you. And what they agreed to give them was the parking lot at Allenbrook and a wooden bridge, pedestrian bridge over Vickery Creek near the cliffs where
Okay.
the sewer line crosses.
Okay, so what I see from this project as a resident of this corridor, really the corridor, is that none of this addresses the needs or health of the people that live in this corridor. That I can't make a right turn lane to go to Azalea Drive means I have to make a left turn to go to the square, to make a left, to go to Willio, to make a left, to come back, to go a place that's a half a mile from my house, I become more of the circular traffic that's already coming from East Cobb.
Right.
So I can just say, forget the park. And I think that not having a sidewalk, I am one of the people that does not like walking in the woods. If I'm gonna walk in the woods, that's called a lifestyle. Then there's a thing called a lifeline, which is a sidewalk to get you to the river, because maybe you're gonna walk to Publix, believe it or not.
That's why I talked about extending the sidewalk once
Right.
the road narrowed, because we anticipated there would be people like you that would be concerned about not walking in
Right.
the woods to get down to the river.
But I'm not, the destination isn't always the river, that's a lifestyle. Just like the
But-
people, I know Jason.
But the connection would be, you
I
have
get
a crossing at the roundabout, and that would put you on the multi-purpose path
I get it.
and across the
However,
river.
you've got about 3,000 people that live in those apartments, and you're telling them in order to cross the river, not you, it's designed now, you have to cross Highway 9 to cross the river. Thousands of people, we're not talking 100 people. Thousands of people live in those apartments. Also, I'm very concerned about the impact of this road on MARTA bus stops. You know, I've been a proponent of transit for years. There is another MARTA bus stop down at Azalea Drive, which is pitiful right now. And it is so ADA non-compliant. It's got ruts from trucks and everything else. So,
I'm just trying to improve a bad plan. I can't provide a perfect plan because of the
right, no, I
constraints
get
that
it,
are
I
in
get it.
place.
Now, because I have to ask you all these questions, because we only get 5 minutes as city council, and, you know.
And there's other people here that want to ask.
Right, so.
Yeah, we need to.
Just, one other thing, besides the tree canopy, which, you know, that's like when they wanted to cut down all the trees at City Hall so we could put up shade sails. The city doesn't have a good track record for making a beautiful promenade of trees. Holcomb Bridge is a perfect example. In the 80s, we were guaranteed it was going to be a veritable promenade of trees. Still waiting.
Right, but we're not here, we're not here.
Okay, the last thing I want to know is
Not
how
here
is
to
this
bash
going to
people.
impact Vickery Creek? Because from a historical standpoint, and this is the historic entrance to the historic gateway of the largest historic district in Metro Atlanta. Right down on Vickery Creek was, in 1936, the body of H. Mac Brown was found because he was lynched in Fulton County. And that is considered sacred soil, and we want to put up a permanent monument there. How will their plan affect that?
Well, we're not, yeah, he's
Well, I
not,
wanna
he's not
know.
aware of that.
Well, I don't know what's gonna happen to Hickory Creek.
They are obliterating the area.
The whole the pretty.
I'm
creek
trying
in
to
the park.
reduce the
Yeah,
impact.
but I'm trying to clarify it because you gave us a lot of information,
Right.
and I really appreciate it. But I was not aware that they were, you know, where those parking spaces are down by Vickery Creek, they're gonna be gone.
They're gone.
So will Vickery Creek. Don't we have federal water laws that
This is
tell
the
us we
purpose
can't
of this,
drain?
because now we've got other questions, and there's gonna be
Okay,
other.
Claire, I'm here because I want to ask, if you don't mind. Perhaps other people are thinking the same questions. Please don't interrupt me until I'm complete.
Go for it.
How don't we have, he's the man that knows the answers, the city council doesn't, and RDOT won't give you the straight truth.
I'm not
Do
here
we
to
have
bash
federal
council
laws
or-
that require us to not impact that creek
Uh,
that drains into the Chattahoochee?
No, as long as they are doing what's known as best management practices for erosion control, they can get a grading permit.
But will the creek stop? What's gonna happen to the creek? That's what I wanna know. What's gonna happen to the
To
creek?
Vickery Creek, it doesn't get dammed up. The coffer dams are basically little mini dams around the foundation of the pier that sits in the
Okay.
water. It's not a dam that dams the whole creek up. It's just the dam that keeps the water out so they can excavate and pour concrete.
And the water will go around those?
Yes.
Right, okay. Just, we wanna make the visual very clear of what it's gonna look like, because it ain't pretty.
No, but there, and if you look at the website that RDOT has posted with the windshield wiper, you don't see the retaining walls because they've got trees that aren't going to exist masquerading them. They're not showing you that sound wall. They're not showing you a lot of things, because if they showed you all the trees that were going to get cleared and all the retaining walls that were going to get built, you'd go, WTF. And I can tell you that, you know, if I break the numbers out differently, just for retaining walls, it's $11 million of retaining walls. That's a third of the budget. $11 million of retaining walls.
Do you have a question right here?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, Ron, first of all, thank you so much. I cannot imagine the time you spent on this, but we really appreciate it. My question is, I'm wondering, you mentioned that there was, in the original, back in 2011, 2000, around then, you mentioned there was a roundabout by King Street, but I and Mary Dell were parts of those. We went to those meetings and were there for the original presentation of what their suggestion was. There were no roundabouts at all, Ed, and
Oh, I'm not disputing what you say. I'm only telling you the evidence that's available on the city website. That was the only commonality. They did have, Andreas did put one there, and that was labeled historic gateway master plan.
well, when the original one that they presented, and we were there, sitting there, and afterwards I went up to him and I said, and I knew about the roundabouts that were supposed to be, that they were talking about. And I asked him, I said, what do you think about the roundabouts that they're planning on putting there? And he looked down and he shook his head and he said, a roundabout is not the way to that's not the solution to these problems. And I just wonder, I was just curious where you picked up that one.
What
And
did
I
he-
made some changes or something.
Did he say what the best answer is? Because I was at that study years ago at the Azalea and Highway 9.
Yeah,
And it was either Pond or Gliding Jackson out of Orlando that said,
yeah.
there does not exist solutions that solve this problem. There are none. They don't exist in the entire transportation world outside of, right? And so everything we're doing is just trying to make it, move it, get it less dangerous, and make it better. But did he say what he, because I remember the split road.
Yeah.
It was
Split
the split
Yeah.
road, yeah,
So
right.
what did, because I thought there were roundabouts on the other one. What did he
He didn't
say?
have one down at Oxbow? I thought he had it down at Oxbow.
Andreas
maybe-
had one at Oxford.
Maybe Oxbow he did, but not at King Street.
It was
I know, because I was.
split for where Overland is, and those
Okay.
people did not want that,
Exactly.
I forget which side, the
Exactly.
north. They didn't want that.
Right.
And so the next time we came to a meeting, lo and behold, it wasn't, we didn't even discuss it. It was just, this is what we're gonna do. So it was like they didn't hear us. They
But did
never.
Dwayne say what he thought what the answer would be? Because you can't.
Well, he'd given his recommendation in the presentation. I can't remember exactly, but I remember the split road.
Yeah.
But I do remember we went to a lot of meetings, and pretty much everybody said we don't want it, and pretty much they said, this is what you're gonna get. So we just kind of come to the conclusion, okay, it's what we're gonna get.
And this is where RDOT really falls short, is they would prefer to be mysterious and opaque rather than explain to you what you're dealing with. You have to have a meeting because you're hitting one of these three criteria. And the only workaround is the roundabout. And they could have upsold it to you by saying it's going to discourage truck traffic because the truck drivers don't like it. And then you'd go, oh, well, now I understand. It's not a difficult explanation, but they prefer to just go, we're the professionals, let us do it, and just
How much more room would it take with 9 splits, and they've got the nice pavers and you can turn left, and how much more would it take to do something like that where the median is not built up? There's a
it's
median,
the same.
but you can use it.
It's the same width. You're not achieving anything in width reduction. It's just not landscape. That's all.
But why couldn't we do something like that?
Because it's going to push the edges of your road out and encroach onto all those properties more than it already is. That's why they did the roundabout with the narrower median.
Well, we have 4 lanes already. There's 4 lanes in front of us. There's several areas that already have the turn lane.
Right.
So why can't we use what we have? We'd have to expand it a little bit.
Well, they are, but the problem is when you introduce that center lane, it's what it does to the edges of outside edges of the road.
But the roundabout's going to take even more.
But the roundabout is here. whereas the wider road is all the way. And what they're doing is minimizing the aggregate impact. It may be a bigger impact where the roundabout is placed. I'm not crazy about having the roundabout on the curve, because when you put the roundabout on the curve, it's bigger than when you put it on a straightaway, which is why I think Warm Springs is a better match for that. But I can understand if they wouldn't take they would add a roundabout and move the roundabout, because then you've got businesses that have too far between roundabouts for their customers to go and loop back around.
But just they're narrowing, mayor and council are narrowing, they agreed to, right? The
Yes,
road. So I
yes.
mean, that's a good thing. That's gonna narrow some of the footprint of
Right.
the roundabout,
Any,
right.
any other
Now,
questions?
I have a question.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Have they provided section showing the existing road and section showing the proposed road? Not generic sections like they have,
That's all they've showed.
but specific at specific locations, so that
Right.
people can actually see, including council, can actually see what are the changes actually happening there.
That would be a wonderful thing for them to provide, but
Are you
They
talking
don't-
about a pretty visual or like the?
No, an actual technical section showing
like
this
what
is the
you
profile of the road now, and this is the profile of the new road, and the path, and the limits of disturbance.
it makes it very difficult for anybody to come to a...
How can council
Yeah.
approve something if they don't have the information?
You're absolutely right.
Well, I think that's what happened on the lower section.
So how do
Is
they
in
get,
defense of council, they heard a beautiful tree-lined boulevard,
Right.
and, we all, oh, that sounds wonderful, but no one ever explained the cost. And the tree, and the fact that you really aren't getting, like you've shown beautifully, it's really excellent the way you've shown that it's only a very, very 900 linear feet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's, they show that one section,
yeah.
but that's out of a plan book. That's out of the GDOT plan book. It's not, it's just, it's not really informational. It's,
Have they discussed in this plan removing all the overhead electric wires and power poles?
they have, but they only have $1.5 million. And the problem is that's going to all be spent relocating the utilities to cross the bridge that they're going to take out.
On the T-Splosh page, it says that's what we're spending our money on, is underground utilities. That's what it says our 3 million's going to.
Yeah,
On the T-Splosh
but
plan,
they,
so.
but they're
On
all,
the Roswell.gov page, and it says we're spending 3 mil, and then when you look at the paragraph below it, it says, and I'm really, regardless of what we do, I really do hope we bury the utilities,
On that road.
the power lines.
and now, going up the road, if the city has the contractor bury the conduit as they go, and all they have to do is pull it to the points that it comes out of the ground, it mitigates the expense compared to having the power company, Georgia Power, come in and do the whole thing soup to nuts. It's a completely different exercise.
Any other questions? Sally?
When you were talking about limits of disturbance, I didn't quite understand how much further. You showed that initial picture where you drew the marker colors,
Right.
Charles. I just want to know how far back. What's the maximum? It's the one with the black and white with the marker colors.
Way at the beginning.
What? Yes, towards the beginning. How far back at the most? Is that it? Yeah. How far back at the most is the limits of disturbance from the new curb? From the new
Even
proposed curb?
There's the new
Well,
curve.
there's the new curb, but the new curb, you see
Or-
how
or-
far that behind the existing curb.
Mm-hmm.
From the existing curb to the limits of disturbance, this is 75 feet
I'm sorry,
right here.
you did say that. Okay, that's, wow.
75 feet, that's all trees, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes, so trees.
That's national forest. That's-
On either side.
Yes, for the 2 years or 3 years that this construction project is ongoing, I guess it'll throw a lot more traffic on Halcombe Bridge and down 400, right? I mean, has there been any assessment of what that will do and what that?
I have not seen that addressed in any of the documents I've gone through. In the GDOT
Traffic study,
archives.
that's what you're talking about, that will be diverting that traffic over to 400.
and I asked you this earlier, and I still don't quite understand the answer. Roswell's saying 24 million, GDOT's saying 40, whatever,
47 million.
47. What happens? I mean, what happens? And we're supposedly only spending 3 million, right?
And
So
when you
what
go, when you go,
happens?
when you go
What does
back
this
through the
mean?
years and you look at the numbers that they had, it's grown exponentially. Now, when you talk to RDOT about redesigning this, they almost go into a panic. And I think the reason for their panic is the escalation in construction costs that are substantially beyond the consumer price index. I think that's the source of their panic.
But is GDOT spending this money? Like
It's federal, state, and T-SPLOST money. But where the state and federal government go, yeah, the well is dry, you keep, coming in with a platinum project, and there's a limit to what we're gonna give you. I mean, who knows?
GDOT's got it on their site.
But
Does that mean like that they kind of think they're going to get this money from the Fed? I mean,
Well, I don't know, maybe.
just asking.
I don't know, because we don't have a seat at that table. And that's why I've been advocating for a Transportation Commission of Citizens, so that we do have a seat at that table, so that we do have those answers. And then we have an ability to give council another source of informed knowledge that they're not getting from RDOT. They're getting a very limited stream of information.
And perspective. I mean,
Yes,
I
and perspective, and it's
think RDOT provides a great perspective as traffic engineers.
Their
Yeah,
job
but-
inherently puts
There's
them at
other
odds
perspectives being
with
considered.
residents because they're trying to move traffic wherever that traffic comes from, so that's their job.
And there are really only two metrics by which traffic engineers are judged by their peers. How much traffic did you increase? How much money did you touch? There's no incentive to cut costs because it's a resume build. The more money they touch, the bigger dog they look like.
I think one of the things that your pricing from 2012, we all forget, was we were in the absolute pit of a recession, and everything was cheap.
Oh, yes.
Everything was cheaper, and now Atlanta is in the throes of the biggest construction since pre-construction of the Civil War.
And our construction industry has not had the ramp up that it had
Exactly.
to the last time. It was decimated, and it's not where it was, but the demand has gone
Right.
beyond it. And that's what's driving the pricing.
Of course, but I think that when they look at those prices, they forget that this has gone back 15 years, we've gone through several recessions, but
Yeah.
in 2012, we were in the belly of the recession.
But what RDOT unfortunately loses sight of is save money wherever you can. And it's always like, well, if it costs more, we go to council, we go to
Yeah,
the
they
state,
get it.
we get more money.
Two things that we need to talk about, and they're not directly related to the road cost, but they are peripheral. One is the cost to the businesses that are currently on Highway 9. In my shopping center, I've talked to pretty much all of the people that are in there. And when I showed them the impact on my parking lot for 2 years, they said, we can't stand it. Amalfi doesn't have enough parking weekend nights to service what they have right there. And if you take away half a row of the car out of the parking lot.
Just on a temporary basis.
For 2 years,
It's a disaster.
Yeah, Salvatore, who's a really good friend of mine, told me, he says, Ashok, if this happens, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to close shop. And that would be disastrous to me as a business, because he's one of my prime tenants.
Plus our community
And yeah, plus our community.
and our lifestyle, quality of life.
Other thing that's not being, and then the building next door to me, where Schwan Kitchens is.
Yes.
Martha and Hans are good friends of mine. When you take away their front parking lot, which is pretty much what's going to happen, Hans told me, he said, I spent $150,000 to redo the suite that I'm in, and you're going to force me to move. Who's going to compensate me for that? I said, good luck on that. The other thing that's not being talked about is the present, the budget for right-of-way acquisition is 11.9 or some such million dollars, which divided by 60 property owners works out to only about $190,000.
No, it's a lot less than that, because out of that $11 million, I've seen the breakdown. And the actual pot of money for the purchase of the land is maybe a third of that.
Okay, which means that the average person would be compensated $60,000. Now I tell you, when you come to me and tell me that I'm going to take all this land in front of you, take away the monument marker, cut down your precious 75-year-old oak tree, and I'm going to pay you $60,000, I'll tell you, see you in Superior Court.
Yeah, and you have a very good case, because in the GDOT design manual, the criteria for right-of-way acquisition in a condemnation procedure, the bar is that has every design consideration been taken to minimize the need to take this property? And if the answer is no, they lose.
Mhm.
Now, if they're going to have that fight, it's going to be pretty easy to demonstrate that they have not provided that. And believe me, the project isn't going to start any sooner fighting with people than it will if you redesign it and get people on board.
And then lastly, and I'll turn it over, when you do this to the businesses and property owners by taking away this valuable land, the impact on my property alone is going to be over $1 million. So.
And to Ashok's point, because that's a small business corridor, everybody's an independent business, no one will move into those businesses.
No.
You're going to create an economic slum where once there was something. There will be nothing. It will be
There
decimated.
was potential. That's what I think is unfortunate, is there is potential. I mean, work needs to be done for sure, but it's the mill, it's the square, it's the river.
But I mean,
Allenbrook is going to be
It's
there,
a
their
South End
business, it
Pacific
just
Road.
has
All those
potential to
little
be sense of place.
independently owned businesses
And if we
will be
widen that
decimated.
road like 120, it's done.
But the
There
point is,
is a property owner that owns a home, it's an historic home, and he's in the process of going through, putting a lot of money in plans and things to try to get approvals to restore this home. But because this plan is as such that it is, he's now in this quandary. He
Right.
spent tens of thousands, maybe $100,000 going through this process, and now he's at a standstill. What happens to him? He's going to have to go through this process again because the encroachment of this new, the boundaries of this project are going to make his house not viable anymore, even though he's in this process of going through rehabilitating historic property.
I can't address these kinds of individual concerns.
Right.
What I can do is advocate to shrink the footprint and the impact to minimize the adverse
I
consequences for
agree.
the property owners.
There are too many individual concerns
Yeah.
for you to be able to address them.
But they're being very insensitive about it, and just deal with the state attorneys when they knock on your door, and we'll talk to you at the end of the day, and that's very high-handed and arrogant.
I want to thank everybody for coming. We promised everybody an hour and a half meeting. I want to acknowledge Karen and Charles and Jason. They spent numerous hours late at night doing this. I mean, they have worked on this a week. I mean, they were up all night, all of them, all three of them, doing what we've got here now. You've got your emails. They're going to email you all of the things that you're seeing now. You've got access to Jason. He'll give you his email or voicemail.
maybe.
Right. And you can ask further questions, and we encourage that. This is just a start. And at least we're fortunate enough tonight to have Councilman Wilsey, Zapata, and Palermo, and those are ears that are hearing, and we can.
And I would lose their lives. Well,
Eminent domain acquisition.
this stuff is.
Yes.
And I've talked to an attorney, and I had 20 people. But that's going to be a big help for them. Now, just by way of information, put down any legacy trees, and then touch the fence. So, and yet, I went to Yowell.
All the entrances to City Hall, abandoned local.
Because after I pulled it out of my Google and realized that it was outside of
I was out of town.
I was going to bring it for you. If you ever get a chance, just stop by my office, and I bought it for you sitting down over there.
But now you need to understand